Senator Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses here today. Thank you for your service. Secretary Wormuth, the U.S. and our allies have shipped tens of thousands of Javelins and other anti-tank guided missile systems to Ukraine, where we have seen they've been used for just absolutely devastating impact against Russian tanks and other armed vehicles. It's been encouraging to see, and the skill by which the Ukrainians have deployed them has been outstanding. The proliferation, though, of affordable, easy-to-operate ATGMs has certainly changed the calculus of armor on the battlefield. We do know, though, however, that active protection systems can be used to defend armored vehicles from these kinds of threats. Other countries around the world, some of our allies, have embraced the solution, have been putting it on their armored vehicles in a pretty aggressive way. The U.S. Seems to be somewhat reluctant, with the exception of a small amount of our Abrams tanks that have these systems. The Army doesn't seem to have a plan to test and field anti-protection systems for the entire fleet of Strykers, for example, or other armored vehicles. So my question for you, ma'am, is does the Army have any plans to equip its Stryker with active protection systems? And if so, what is the timeline for testing and training? What does that look like?
Senator, I think, we're certainly very concerned about threats to our tanks. And, we've watched, what drones can do, for example, to Russian tanks. And so we, at this point in time, I think that the protection systems that we have on our Abrams, on our Strykers, are quite good. I certainly would be willing to look in more detail if there are additional systems that have proved to be effective. We're also looking, as I said, there is a balance between how quickly we can modernize some of our enduring platforms like Stryker while also modernizing. But I will certainly commit to you to look into that in a little more detail.
Well, as you mentioned, the threat is evolving pretty rapidly with relatively inexpensive weapons that do devastating damage. So I would hope that we're thinking this through, and lessons learned from conflicts are usually incredibly valuable. So.
Yes, we're taking active note of the lessons coming out of Ukraine.
I appreciate that. General McConville, the Army's multi-domain task forces represent, as you know, the centerpiece in operationalizing the Army's multi-domain operations concept. And this vision of MDO is critical to understanding how the Army plans to fight and win wars in the future. The Army has already activated 2 multi-domain task forces and plans, I understand, to stand up 3 more. In the Army, however, my question for you is, in the Army where the active component is less than 50% of the force structure, how does the Army National Guard fit into this vision for both MDTFs as well as MDO?
Well, the Army National Guard is absolutely critical. I mean, I can't speak enough of what they're doing for the country. The Army Reserves, as you said, they're more than 52%. What we've asked them to do in the United States and also overseas is just miraculous. And I keep saying this is the year of the Guard, and every year seems like it's the same year after year, and we've asked them to do so much. And we have, the Secretary and I have committed to the Guard that they will get the modern equipment. Some people, it won't be the first 31 in the regular Army. We've made a promise to the Guard that they will be fielded with this type of equipment up front. I've talked to General Hokanson. He wants the National Guard in coordination with the governors to reflect where the regular Army is going. They want to have the same capabilities, and we are doing that with them as we work through those problem sets.
Right. Thank you. Secretary Wormuth, as chair of Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, I'm concerned about the impacts of the increased domestic activation of our Guard forces for national disaster recovery, civil unrest, pandemic response. They've been called on for a variety of missions. And we absolutely need these brave men and women to answer the calls to service, but it also is increased operational tempo, and that certainly takes its toll. Data compiled by my staff indicates that the quantity of Army Guardsmen that falls short of earning a retirement credible year has increased from less than 1% to nearly 4.5% over the last decade. And while this is a small percentage of the total force, and certainly many factors are at play. I don't think it's any coincidence that the number is growing amid increased calls for non-federal duty. So my question for you is, while the state and federal management of our National Guard is an essential framework, is your department considering the inadvertent side effects of state activations while you're undertaking your duty status reforms?
Senator, we're trying to look very, as General McConville said, we're very aware of how heavily used the National Guard is in many parts of our country. And we want to make sure that they are compensated and provided the benefits that they should get when they're activated in Title X status. And we try to look very carefully at the second and third order effects of their support to civil authorities. So we will look into what you're raising and get back to you with more details.
Well, I appreciate it. We will follow up with you and look forward to having a chance to work through this and make sure people are treated fairly and equitably. So Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.